Within this presentation, I will be describing my current work process, as well as an overview of my foray into the post-digital world, delving into the conceptual world of atheistic retellings of biblical stories, and then setting them in a quasi-physical and digital space. I aim to experiment and challenge my preconceived personal practices of art. The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat, and live forever. For me, this quote is a perfect representation of the digital age reflecting the ancient world, drawing comparisons between the apple of Eden and the internet. The current inspiration for my work comes from several varying avenues, the majority of which are taken from real-world current affairs. Firstly, the ever-present threat of total ecological collapse due to climate change is something that is always at the forefront of my mind. Second to that is the looming shadow of nuclear holocaust, brought on through recent heightened tensions between the West and Russia, most notably the war in Ukraine. Misinformation and digital information wars are also something that has been injecting itself into my practice, inspiring me to create work that echoes the fears and hysterias of the current modern world. Artistically speaking, my greatest inspiration for the current year has been Pierre Huyghe. His work has been instrumental in breaking down the ideas of creating art that stands for itself without being a wholly physical creation. When looking into After a Life Ahead, the total interconnectivity between every aspect of the installation was especially eye-opening. From the smallest element of the piece to the installation as a whole, I wanted to replicate this interconnectivity myself in my practice. The hybridized digital and physical aspects of his work also inspired myself and my co-creator, Tom Morris, to produce a hybridized world ourselves in our joint project, Scholar of the First Sin. Huyghe's own delve into the post-digital in No Ghost, Just a Shell was another reference for our overarching work, Scholar of the First Sin. No Ghost, Just a Shell was a collaboration between Huyghe and Perenno, in which physical art was also complemented by digital projections and creations. This produced a chimeric approach to art that has perfectly reflected the post-digital process of appropriation and reenactment. These themes are notable within my current practice, something that I haven't previously considered or included within my own artwork. When considering Huyghe's theme of appropriation of reality, it was concurrent to carry this context into my collaboration work, Scholar of the First Sin. By reenacting reality in a small space, but leaving it skewed and tilted, my work gives a similar reflection of Huyghe's work, but with the variables altered completely. Whilst working in the post-digital, my goal was to conceptualize the modern world hysteria that I previously mentioned as my inspiration. By commentating on these themes through the creation of an installation, I aim to bring these fears to the forefront of the viewer's mind. The installation is aimed to be disorientating and overwhelming, with the subjects being handled difficult to bear. Although not directly inspirational, I wanted to reflect on the idea of inhuman horror, which is personified in Francisco Goya's Saturn devouring his son. The concept of the creator devouring his own progeny out of spite and jealousy is also strongly related to the post-digital world. This is true in the sense that humanity created the internet, and now is fearful and scared of its own creation. Within the book of Genesis 2, the idea that God exiled the creations he made in his own image for the sin of knowledge is also extremely prevalent within my current conceptualization of artwork. Justice Graham Sutherland appropriated the crucifixion in his own style for his 1945 piece, Crucifixion. Myself and Tom Morris also aim to put our own spin on it, and inject our post-digital mentality into something that has traditionally been regarded only within the confines of a Christian setting. For us, the concept in the book of Genesis that knowledge is the first ever sin was directly comparable with the internet today, with the internet representing the entire human race's vast knowledge of all good and evil, and how easy it is to access. It is comparable to the apple of Eden that Adam and Eve were tempted to consume. As well as the implications of the story of Genesis, the death for Christ was also heavily prevalent. Just as Jesus died for our supposed sins, knowledge being one of them, so too must we sacrifice ourselves for the sins of the digital age, with the cross being replaced with electrical cabling. The focal point of the installation is a figure dressed in a 1980s nuclear warfare suit that has been crucified by cabling. The intrinsic meaning of the materiality used is intertwined with the overall philosophical ideas that are exemplified in the work. The cables are representative of the post-digital world we inhabit, living in the internet age. Just as so of our world on the internet, whereupon we are losing our interpersonal skills and true human connection, the cables are representative of this loss of true self. The cabling looks like it is interwoven and connected, when in actuality they lead nowhere and are plugged into nothing, just as humanity is pseudo-living in this information age too. The nuclear suit, in turn, is representative of the neo-Cold War hysteria we currently reside in. Through my own experience of nuclear drills, while serving in the Royal Navy as a helicopter engineer, I understand the real threat of apocalyptic annihilation that is ever present in our daily lives. This fear is personified no better than with the intimidating presence of a nuclear warfare suit, and so the installation will imbue the viewer with this sense of dread. Combined with the cabling and atheistic take on the Bible, the meaning of the work is consolidated perfectly without losing any meaning. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. As a final thought, this quote said by Oppenheimer just after witnessing the first detonation of an atomic bomb perfectly encapsulates the true horror and hysteria that my current practice is aiming to replicate on a relatable level.